The recount of ballots following Guyana's March 2nd general elections has been met with strong complaints. Hundreds of Honduran taxi drivers block a road in the capital demanding that the government provide financial aid amid the pandemic. And the Kenyan government seals off a suburb of the capital due to skyrocketing cases of COVID-19 in the area. Welcome to Telesur. I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is from the South. The recount of ballots following Guyana's March 2nd general elections has been met with strong complaints. The ruling Partnership for National Unity criticized the PPPC for not providing the keys for ballot boxes, which had to be pried open. This while the main opposition, People's Progressive Party Civic, raised concerns that counting for the highly contested Region 4 had stopped at 5 p.m., 2 hours before the process was scheduled to conclude. A complaint was lodged to the Elections Commission CEO.
At 5:15 today, this afternoon, one of the stations closed off because the APNU AFC counting agent said that she has to go. We cannot have situations like those. The working day is defined by the timeline. We could have at least completed one more box at that station today.
Meanwhile, on Thursday, the ruling Partnership for National Unity announced that GCOM was forced to temporarily stop the running of the tabulation process at the recount center. It claimed this occurred after a meeting was busted between the opposition and GCOM's information technology supervisor. Last month, GCOM agreed to a recount at 10 workstations over the course of 25 days, which began this Wednesday. Jamaica has facilitated the repatriation of 119 citizens who were stranded abroad due to restrictions of the COVID-19 pandemic. 75 crew members from across 6 ships and 40 Jamaicans stranded in the UK returned home on Wednesday. They will be placed in quarantine for 14 days. Prime Minister Andrew Holness announced that due to the hardship experienced, the government will cover the cost of the quarantine arrangements. St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves says COVID-19 has not yet altered his plans to host elections at the end of the year. General elections are due by March 2021, but Gonsalves said citizens would vote ahead of the 3-month grace period. He said it's too soon to state if this will change, but he has moved ahead with drafting a letter to the Governor General regarding the appointment of the Elections and Boundaries Commission, after discussions with the opposition leader. Hundreds of Honduran taxi drivers have blocked a BC boulevard in Tegucigalpa, demanding that the government provide financial aid amid the pandemic. Some 600 drivers parked their taxis on a street in the west side of the capital. Their demonstration went on until public officials delivered bags of food. While protesters welcomed the aid, they say they also need financial support to pay for basic services like electricity or water. The government imposed a nationwide curfew that prohibits any type of transport except vehicles delivering food supplies.
Every 8 days they receive their food, which is not the solution. There must be another way to avoid putting them in danger, because here we are in danger.
We asked for 2,000 lempiras, which is around $80, a monthly financial aid from the government, but I doubt they will give it because this government is greedy.
Belize has revised its state of emergency, reducing some of its measures imposed to combat the pandemic. Some businesses are allowed to reopen, but social distancing rules and the mandatory wearing of face masks still apply. This as the Prime Minister warned that penalties are being increased for breaches of some of the measures.
That ultimately everything depends on our observing the physical distancing and other rules. Thus it is that we are actually increasing the penalties for particular breaches. As just one example, those caught using the illegal crossings to go especially into Mexico and Quintana Roo, where the proliferation of coronavirus cases has skyrocketed, will, upon conviction, go straight to jail for 3 months. A second conviction will result in a 1-year prison sentence.
Earlier, we spoke with Dr. Marvin Manzanero, the Director of Health Services at the Ministry of Health of Belize, about the measures taken in his country to halt the spread of the coronavirus and how they expect a second wave of cases.
Well, we never did have a community transmission happening in Belize, but we took measures as if we were having extensive community transmission almost from the get-go. I know it's a difficult situation because people are not routinely used to this. It's a drastic public health measure to the point that even Belizeans who were caught outside of Belize were banned from coming back in. I don't know that we had resistance from the community as such. Even though our land borders, for example, right now remain closed. Our borders with Guatemala are closed, borders with Mexico are closed, the airport is still closed, and that's been for more than a month now. I don't know that the community has been providing any kind of resistance to those measures. I think we're trying to adapt to the new norms and understanding that new norms such as physical distancing, as you mentioned, the use of masks now in public, those are new norms that we are gradually educating the general public about. Yeah, we developed a scaled up approach when we started first initially the banning of certain citizens from coming to Belize, eventually closing the airport, eventually closing one border and then the other border. So we're using that same approach when we scaled up till we got to a complete lockdown, scaling it down. We definitely are not considering opening the borders for now. Mexico is having their ongoing increasing pandemic, a number of cases. Same thing in Guatemala, US and Honduras, which are the other neighbors close to us. So it's going to be a phased out approach. Schools have still been closed. They were closed 2 weeks before the Easter break. That's the third week in March. And we may very well lose the school year, but those are mechanisms that we felt needed to be done in order to be able to contain this first wave of COVID-19.
We'll take a short break now. Don't go away. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has presented new evidence against U.S. mercenaries who allegedly tried to topple his government.
There have been testimonies, top testimonies, speaking of the involvement of this individual, this American citizen, a former Green Beret, Jordan Woodrow. He is president and CEO of a security company, Silver Corp, based in Florida. Whoever wants to search for the elements, you will be able to easily get them in the United States. Jordan Woodrow has worked directly with Donald Trump for many years. He has rendered security services, intelligence services.
President Maduro presented part of the interrogation in which Luke Alexander Denman, a U.S. mercenary, confirmed the participation of Venezuelan opposition lawmaker Juan Guaido in the failed terrorist plot.
Did you know about a document that described the close of the operation?
Yes, I saw it about a month and a half ago with Jordan's signature and Juan Guaido's signature.
The mercenary confirmed that the goal of the operation was to kidnap President Maduro and take him to the United States.
Involved, what other tasks involve taking control of the airport?
Securing the sector, establishing outer security, communicating with the tower, bringing in planes, one of which includes one to put Maduro on and take him back to the United States.
Fishermen in Chuao, a small coastal town in Aragua State, Venezuela, were part of the operation that detained 8 mercenaries trying to lead an incursion into the country. The so-called Operation Gideon sought to carry out terrorist attacks, including a possible assassination attempt against President Maduro.
Así se ven las costas de Chuao.
This is the coast of Chuao,
a fishing town well known for its cocoa plantations. It can only be reached by sea or air. Security forces are still in the area after a group of fishermen on Sunday detected an unknown boat carrying 8 mercenaries following a joint operation between civilians and the military and the police. The mercenaries were captured on this beach.
We were fishing as we do most days. When we saw a speedboat we didn't recognize. After we reported, this helicopter from the armed forces arrived over the area, accompanied by the Navy contingent. They never thought a fisherman could also be part of the militia. Farm workers are part of the militia. So are teachers, policemen. We are all part of the Bolivarian militia. As a people, we are always at the ready.
Vamos a darle un aplauso al mundo desde Chugao, que Venezuela se respeta.
Another thing these mercenaries couldn't imagine was that they would be captured by a Chavista community that was already on the alert following intelligence about a possible incursion.
They underestimated us, thinking less of us. They didn't see us coming as an organized people. They think they are John Rambo and we are simple workers, but we will always triumph.
This is the social fabric that has been woven over more than 20 years of the Bolivarian Revolution. Once more, David met Goliath in what was proven to be an attempt at an invasion backed by the United States.
They came face to face with us and our simple weapons, our rifles and small pistols that did not compare to theirs. As we were getting ready to apprehend them, we saw some of them were trying to reach their weapons to fire at us. That's when the fishermen helped us restrain them with their fishing lines. When one of them said he was the son of Baduel, we knew these were the terrorists we had been warned about. We had their pictures already and were on alert. When they got off the boat, we came to support the police officers because there were few of them.
As they were being apprehended and before backup arrived, the mercenaries asked to be freed.
They told us to join their cause, saying this government was going to be toppled. They said there were more of them and they were doing this for us. They said we were the same, we belonged to the same country, and they told us they had dollars. No matter how much money they offer, we will always maintain our dignity.
Peace was interrupted for a moment in Chuao, and its people came out to defend it.
With violence, you cannot win. This is a united nation. They weren't just coming to kill the president. If that had happened, this would have become a slaughterhouse, and we can't allow that. This town is paradise. We know how to fish, how to work. We have people who work in the cacao plantation and others who fish. We are not used to violence. This is not how you get rid of a government. If you want Maduro out, you need to take part in the electoral process. This is not the way.
Madeline García, Telesur, Chuao, Venezuela.
Venezuela is accusing the United States and its drug enforcement agency of masterminding the failed attack against the country. More details in this report.
For 1 year, the incursionists lived in 3 camps in neighboring Colombia.
It's up to us to create a new history.
About 300 deserters of the Venezuelan military and police force enlisted under the command of at least 3 former special operations soldiers from the United States.
We will train and follow your tactical plan to help us free our country from tyranny. You can count on us.
On the front lines is 43-year-old Jordan Godreau, a highly decorated 3-time Bronze Star recipient for courage in deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan as a Special Forces medic.
We want to thank you, Mr. Jordan, for helping us work towards the liberation of Venezuela.
On its website, Godreau's private security company, Silver Corp USA, boasts of conducting operations in more than 50 countries. Godreau aligned himself to U.S. President Donald Trump's incessant need to topple President Maduro and was soon introduced to Trump's longtime bodyguard Keith Schiller through someone who worked in private security. Both attended a meeting with opposition member Juan Guaido in the United States.
I've asked my team to update our plans to reopen the U.S. Embassy in Caracas so that we are ready to go. As soon as Maduro steps aside, I am confident that we will raise that flag again in Caracas.
Operation Gideon saw the arrest or assassination of President Nicolas Maduro and the seizure of Caracas in 96 hours. However, at the first sign of failure, the lead incursionist had this to say.
Our men are continuing to fight right now. Our units have been activated in the south, west, and east of Venezuela.
By that time, the Bolivarian forces had already killed 8 of the mercenaries. Authorities also revealed that one of the men who was captured confessed to being a DEA agent.
I spoke to Captain Antonio Sequea. We met in Bogota, and he presented a military operation that was organized by Donald Trump and his government.
Later, 2 former U.S. soldiers were captured in the coastal state of Aragua.
One of them is Luke Alexander Denman, war veteran.
The U.S. citizens are from the state of Texas, one from Dallas, the other from Austin, and were part of a contract signed by opposition member Juan Guaido to invade Venezuela.
Yeah, you can do the sign. Okay, he signed in every page. Like I said,
Guaido first dismissed the armed incursion against his country as a montage of the government. Once neutralized, hours later he began to demand respect for the human rights of the mercenaries.
They were waiting for them to kill them. Who are those bodies they showed in the state of Vargas?
After absolute silence for more than 48 hours, Donald Trump denied any connection to the plot to overthrow Nicolas Maduro.
I just got information, nothing to do with our government, but I just got information on that. So we'll find out. We just heard about it. But whatever it is, we'll let you know. But it has nothing to do with our government.
U.S. media have dubbed Operation Gideon the Venezuelan Bay of Pigs in reference to the first great defeat of the United States in Latin America when its mercenaries invaded Cuba by entering Playa Girón.
To other news now, the Kenyan health minister has announced that one suburb of the capital Nairobi, as well as a part of the port city of Mombasa, will be cordoned off due to skyrocketing cases of coronavirus in those areas. Eastleigh, a suburb in Nairobi with a large Somali population, is cordoned off because it has recorded 68 cases out of a total of 582 cases in the country. The old town of Mombasa is also sealed off due to having 64 infections. Starting from Wednesday, no movement is allowed in and out of both areas. The Kenyan government also announced that from Wednesday it will shoulder all the costs of quarantine, as citizens have resisted taking free tests out of fear that if they are positive, they will have to pay for their own isolation and treatment.
The people of Eastleigh here are suffering. Most of the people of Eastleigh are poor people. We are just having some problems like people depending on working.
And there is no traveling, there is no work. Even the people that are working inside the house, they are not working. There is a big problem. They call the coronavirus lockdown here, and we don't see that coronavirus they are talking about.
Lesotho's Prime Minister Thomas Thabane has reiterated his intention to retire by the end of July, despite the risk of prosecution for his alleged involvement in the 2017 murder of his wife. His ruling All Basotho Convention Party last week rejected his demand for immunity from prosecution after he steps down.
Allow me to announce today that one significant step into my retirement has been complemented with the enactment of the 9th Amendment to the Constitution. As a result, government and the political party that I lead will coordinate the process of my retirement.
We have more stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. At least 13 people have been killed and hundreds hospitalized after a gas leak at a chemical plant in eastern India. The gas escaped out of tanks at a complex owned by South Korea's LG Chem that has suspended operations because of India's coronavirus lockdown. Footage from local media showed people, including women and children, lying unconscious in the streets of Visakhapatnam. Authorities used mist blowers to spray water in the affected area to neutralize the effect of the gas.
Incident happened, as per report, at around 2:30 a.m. in the night, previous night. Initially, the people were affected in terms of throat irritation, skin irritation, and some toxic gas smell. So the local villagers tried to contact the local administration and the local police station, and the RRC unit immediately rushed and was there within half an hour. And after that, they helped in two ways. The first was for neutralizing the situation inside the polymers, LG polymer factory itself. And the second is for the evacuators near the factory site, which is the abutting village of Venkatapuram.
Dozens of Israelis protested outside the office of the Prime Minister, angered by a Supreme Court ruling that Benjamin Netanyahu may form a new government while under indictment for corruption charges. Some even chained themselves to the railing of metal barriers outside the office. The unanimous decision released just before midnight on Wednesday cleared the way for Netanyahu and his once rival Benny Gantz to join together in a controversial power-sharing deal. Netanyahu and Gantz said they expected their coalition to be sworn into office next week. Dozens of protesters in Lebanon have taken to the streets in the capital Beirut, demanding the release of those detained in last week's protests. Police tried to disperse the demonstrators who gathered outside the military court. Earlier in the day, dozens gathered outside the Justice Palace to demand the independence of the judiciary and the release of detained protesters. Last week's demonstrations had been triggered by price hikes in consumer goods due to the crash of the local currency, which had lost more than half of its value. Thousands of people in Thailand have queued at the Finance Ministry in Bangkok to enroll in a 3-month cash handout of $450. Thai authorities have already approved 13.4 million people, half of the applicants for this program. This is expected to benefit a third of the population. They are mainly informal workers who lost their jobs in tourism, entertainment, food and service sectors. In Russia, wildfires have continued to spread through fields in Siberia, with blazes spreading across nearly 460 square kilometers. Zabaikalsky Krai, the region hit the most by the fires, hasn't seen significant rainfalls for the last 3 months. Regional authorities have issued hundreds of fines to local residents and farmers for violating fire safety regulations. According to Greenpeace, the number of wildfires has increased by 20% since the start of the coronavirus lockdown, in part due to city dwellers escaping to the countryside. Iraq's parliament has chosen US-backed candidate Mustafa Kadhimi as prime minister, giving the country its first real government in months. The 53-year-old Kadhimi is Iraq's first real prime minister since the last one resigned and became a caretaker in November in the face of persistent anti-government protests. The parliament also approved 15 ministers out of a prospective 22-seat cabinet, with 7 ministries still empty. The new government is set to hold early elections, but Kadhimi admitted it will face an array of other challenges. These include navigating an economic crisis spurred by oil price crashes and the COVID-19 pandemic. And with that, we end our news brief. But you can find these and many other stories by checking our website, telesurenglish.net. And be sure to follow us on social media as well. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Until next time.